Money mindset in nonprofits. In this video, I want to share 5 helpful thoughts for you about managing money and money panic in your nonprofit. So, the number one thing that I hear about money in nonprofits, of course, apart from we don't have enough money, we need more money, is that money is connected with bureaucracy. And nobody likes bureaucracy, right? Paperwork, all the things, blah. Except I do like it, and I'm going to share you some ideas for how you might like it too. So let's look at paperwork, bureaucracy, processes, systems, etc. around managing money. We often think that we're doing this for the donor, right? Because they ask us to have systems in place and processes and procedures and policies and guides and instructions and whatnot. And of course, sometimes they ask to show them that. And it's true, right? It's an easy way and a beautiful way to build trust with your donors if you have those things in place and if you're able to share them and to show that you're really implementing them. And I say easy because another way to build trust with your donors is, of course, having great impact and great results. But those are things that are really hard and complex and take a lot of time, especially compared to setting up a nice finance process or finance policy and implementing it. It's relatively easy, I promise you. And also, I think it's a beautiful way of building trust with your donor because it's actually something that you could and actually should be doing for yourself too, because it's something that will help you in your nonprofit as well. So, actually, helping yourself and in an easy way helps you to build trust with your donors. So, that's great news, right? So, let me tell you how. So, firstly, when you are, for example, having a procurement policy in place, something that a lot of people don't like designing and don't like following or implementing in reality, but procurement policies are helpful because they help you be more certain that you get good value for your money when you're contracting someone, right? And that's great because it means that you are increasing the chance of success by contracting that person who's going to do a great service for you, or company that's going to do a great service for you. So you're actually creating a bigger chance of success by hiring the right person for the right amount of money. And that's where procurement policies can be helpful to you. Yes, so actually it helps you to um, get more value out of the money that you've been working so hard to get for your nonprofit. Another thing of having strict policies in place, for example, around authorization of costs, approvals of payments, 4I principle, and so on and so forth, is that these things help you, if you implement them, of course, to avoid paying fake invoices or inflated invoices that fraudsters are sending you. And it can also, to an extent, help you avoid big costs of corruption. I say this very carefully because I do know that in some contexts, corruption is a serious and very complex issue that is very hard to avoid completely. But with the right procedures in place, you will be able to minimize the impact of corruption and fraudsters on your operations. And that again means that you can now be more certain that you're paying for real things, real services, the real price to a real person. And again, it means that the money that you're working so hard to get from your grants and private donations and sponsorships, that you're actually putting that money to good use, increasing again your chance of having success with that money when it comes to achieving your aims for your vision and your mission of your nonprofit, right? That's what's moving all of us forward, right? But now let's look at another aspect of finance management and bureaucracy and all the paperwork around money, um, because this is important and helpful for yourself, not just to make sure that you get the most out of the money that you get, and we all know how hard it can be to get it, so better that you can use it to the maximum effect. But it also helps you in being sure that you're asking for the right amount of money for the right things when you are preparing your project proposal, budget, or when you are mentioning numbers in your campaign, right? So very often you see campaigns where we say, like, for $5 you can help us do ABC in 1 week. But then, of course, you want to be sure that the number $5 is correct, that the week period is correct, and that A, B, and C is possible in that week for that money, right? So if you say $5 is enough for a week long school lunch for one girl, you want to be sure that that's correct. Because people are then going to give you that money and they're expecting that you're going to be able to buy lunch for one girl for 1 week, right? And the same is with a project budget, of course. If you submit a project budget with a proposal, then the donor approving that expects that you can do all the things with the money that's projected in your project budget. And it can be very painful if you made a mistake with your budget and if actually it isn't possible to do those things that you promised in your campaign or in your project budget with that amount of money. And that happens, I'm sure you know that also, but I once worked in an organization that got a grant to produce free films. And they were super happy. It was a big grant for them and they were eager to get started. But then when the project was approved and we started really looking at the things that they needed to do to produce free films, it turned out that for that money that they got, which was exactly what they asked, they could really make only one good film, not three. Yes, so whoopsie daisy, that is not a comfortable situation to be in right at the start of a project grant when it is all based on a wrong budgeting on your end. Maybe you could have easily said we need this amount for one film and the donor would have agreed. But since you said you're going to do 3 of them for that money, they will be disappointed if there's only one, right? So that's very painful and that's something that you don't want to have happen to you. And having paperwork of past expenses and past projects and maybe also notes about how the implementation went can be helpful for you to understand what are the price levels, how are price levels developing over time maybe. As we all know, things get more expensive, so maybe we can see trends from that in if we compare past invoices from the same vendors, for example, right? So that way we can create realistic expectations based on realistic project budgets and campaign numbers, so that we don't need to disappoint our donors without any good reason for that. So now I'm curious to hear from you. Did you ever make a similar kind of mistake in budgeting, and how did you handle that? Please feel free to jump into the comments and let me know. In the meantime, let me tell you who I am. I'm Susanne Bakker. I'm a non-profit operations strategist, and I love all the things at the back end of your organization, like finance, admin, HR, contracting, management, fundraising, you name it, everything that you might think is boring or scary or confusing. Those are the things that I love. And in this channel, I talk about those things. So you can subscribe to my channel if you want to be sure that you never miss a movie on my YouTube channel. But if you prefer reading stories about nonprofit operations topics, make sure you check the description below the video and subscribe to my Monday and Thursday weekly emails with stories about nonprofit operations topics. So when we were talking about budgeting, I showed you that it's super easy to create a panic around money, in this case unnecessarily, But it's super easy to do that, right? We just use wrong assumptions. We create a budget that isn't realistic. We get the budget approved, which should be a happy moment, and then we are in deep, deep trouble, right? And then panic ensues, what to do, how to handle this, etc., etc. So that's the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because money is not only connected with bureaucracy, but also with panic and problems and bad situations, right? So that's why it's important to also think about what to do in a case of panic. And so the first thing, of course, is to slow down. And actually, in a case of a panic, usually what people are saying is, I need to know this yesterday. Can you do this fast? I need this now. I need the numbers to be correct, but I need them now. So everything is geared towards a fast response, right? And that's when problems get usually bigger than they need to be. So before I dive into an example, I just want to ask you, do you ever have money panic in your nonprofit? If you would like to talk about that, maybe my YouTube comments isn't the best place, but you can find in the description below this video a link to my free nonprofit support community where we can talk about those things and share things together more in private than on the YouTube channel. So if you'd like to talk more about that, join me there. I'm happy to continue the conversation there. So as I was saying, in a panic situation when maybe there's a funding gap, maybe you feel there might have been fraud, or you have a wrong budget for things that you can't actually do, and you're trying to find a way out of that situation of promises and wrong budgets. As I said, usually we are focused on solving things fast. It needs to be done yesterday. We need the numbers now. We need to move forward. And it feels like it's a good idea to skip the processes, the procedures, the paperwork, because it will help us speed up, and speed is good. I'm here to tell you that the bigger the panic, the bigger the need to slow down. I'm all for speed. I don't like it when things are going slow, but in the case of a panic, you need to slow down. You need to take your time to really understand what the situation is that you're looking at, and to understand what caused that and what you can then do to address this situation. Yeah, but first of all, you really need to be sure that you have all the data complete so that you can actually see what's going on. And the importance of that is that if you are not waiting to understand all the data and to have all the data before you can analyze them and strategize around them, is that you might be taking fast decisions based on the wrong numbers because they're not complete, or you might be taking fast decisions that are actually not addressing the real problem because you didn't take time to look at the numbers and analyze and find out what's the problem really. And it might sound very silly to you, but this is a real problem. I once went into an organization where the management was convinced that they were on their way to going bankrupt. This was in the beginning of COVID, a couple of years ago. So there were organizations going bankrupt, and many organizations and also companies, of course, were facing serious challenges with their income and with managing money. So I wasn't surprised that they were panicking about this. And I thought, yeah, okay, if they say so, the management, including the controller, then it must be true. But then I came and I had a look at it, and I found that actually they weren't on their way to bankruptcy. They were on a growth path. They were actually getting better and bigger every year. Of course, I didn't see that in 5 minutes, right? I took my time looking at different things in 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then trying to collect data so that I could share with them why I thought that they weren't going bankrupt, and to show them that really my thoughts were not my thoughts, but based on real data that came from their accounting system, right? So I took my time to collect all the data, to make sure that everything that I needed to know was there, and then to make an analysis, and then to think about how to present this and how to discuss this. But you can imagine that if I hadn't done that, or if I hadn't been given the time to do that, the management would be taking decisions based on their assumption that they were on their way to bankruptcy. So that influences everything you do as a management, like terminating contracts, maybe not hiring new staff, maybe not investing in better equipment, maybe not investing a lot in developing new project ideas, because you think, yeah, we're going to have to close down soon anyway, so why do all those things, right? So you actually can see that by thinking that you're going bankrupt without really having all the data and having a good analysis of the data and taking the time to really be sure, like, what is the situation? Is there a problem? And if so, what is the problem? And what's causing the problem? And how can we address that cause of the problem? They could have actually made themselves go bankrupt, because they would have been taking decisions based on bankruptcy that were all like leading to downscaling, downsizing, not being visible, etc., etc. So their whole growth path that they were actually already on would have been disrupted by that and totally destroyed. So that's why it's super important, when you are panicking, when you think that there's a big problem, that you give your finance team, finance person, whatever it is that you have, time and peace to really work on the data and to present you with correct and complete numbers before you start analyzing and strategizing based on assumptions that aren't really based on reality. So the good news is that while you need to give them time, there are things that you can still do, also being calm, and also not being too fast and too rushed. So what you can do while your team is figuring out, is there a problem? If so, what does it look like? If so, what's causing it? If so, what can we do to address it? You can invest in maintaining and building good, strong relations with your donors and your potential donors, so that by the time you know there's a problem, there's a fraud, you are on your way to bankruptcy, there is a big funding gap, your budget is totally unrealistic compared to your promises, by the time you really know the problem and the size of the problem, you will have strong relations with people and organizations who can actually help you address that situation. So that's why it's super important to stay calm and stay collected in a case of a panic. So now I would like to invite you to join me in my next video, when we will be looking at data and numbers, and where I'll be sharing some things for you to look at, and how looking at those things and interpreting them can help you in your nonprofit do better than before. Bye for now.